Now we will move on to our second presenter this morning and our researcher extraordinaire, and Dr. Jeniffer Mohammed.
Okay, so I'm Jeniffer Mohammed and I'm from the School of Education, and I've been asked to do this presentation. I would like first to give a rationale of why we want to look at the data concerned with underachievement of boys. I think basically it's a question of equity. If we are seeing consistently a group not doing well in the system relative to another group, well then there is some concern about gender equality and equity as they move through the system. I will restrict my presentation to some data from the SEA, from the CSEC exam at the end of 5th form, and from CAPE. I was thinking of tertiary as well, but the 20 minutes does not permit. But by then you would get the picture. I am not a statistician. I have pulled from existing data of people who have analyzed SEA results, in particular one being Professor George. Secondly, the Caribbean Examinations Council, they don't publish analyses, but they certainly publish raw data, and I've used that. The Ministry of Education has done a lot of work on analyzing SEA results as well. NEHRS has published something, and I've looked at some journal articles. Okay, so let's look at SEA. All right. Here you have the means for the three components of the SEA. Maths of 100%, language arts, and creative writing normally at 20. In every single case, if you could make it out clearly, the mean in terms of performance for females, mathematics, language arts, creative writing, they are all higher than the mean for male performance. Okay, you mightn't be able to see clearly, but that is something that is a cause for worry. Because if you have two, as I said, groups going through the system, and one is consistently not reaching the other, then it suggests that something in the schooling is not being gender fair. This is the same information graphically. The blue represents boys and the red represents girls, and this is the mathematics score with the highest at that end. This is the language arts component of the SEA, blue representing boys' performance, dark blue, and red girls' performance. And creative writing tells a similar story. Okay, I've tried to pull out some of the issues there. I'm saying that female students perform significantly better than male students on all components. The period that the ministry analyzed the results was from 2005 to 2008. The gap is greater, however, in literacy-based components, language arts, and creative writing. So we're saying there is a gap, but we are saying that the gap is larger for language-based subjects. So, all right, so we are saying the boys are performing at a lower level. Who are these lower performing boys? We can't just be talking about girls achieving high and boys achieving low. That just isn't the case. It's a variegated case with certain social groups and nuances in the data. So the lowest performing boys, geographically speaking, those coming in under 30%, have been identified as coming mainly from the northeastern region, and they are able to identify specific schools, which they call rural schools, and Port of Spain and environs, and The specific schools they identify are called inner city schools. Not as lower performing, but certainly making mention down there, Caroni and Tobago, where lower performing boys are concerned. So these are like problem areas. It certainly doesn't mean that there are no problems elsewhere, but I want you to get an appreciation of the variegated nature of the problem. Finally, I want to say that the standard deviation of boys' scores that was greater than that of girls, indicating too that not only are they lower performing, but that there's a variability, a wide range of performance levels among them. I suppose I have to read for you. Roughly equal numbers of boys and girls are entered for the exam. So keep that in mind. Equal numbers entered. And if there was comparable performance or something very similar, we will find more or less equal numbers of boys and girls throughout the distribution. Okay, but that does not happen. It suggests then, I am saying that schooling is not gender fair, that some groups do not experience gender equity in schooling. Some of those groups, however, go beyond being just a gendered group. For example, we have poor boys, we have rural boys, and girls have been remarkably out of the conversation because they are dismissed as high performers. But we have a large amount of lower achieving girls, though not much work has been done on that. So what does the data suggest as you read deeply into it? That gender is not the only meaningful characteristic that we should be using to analyze performance and school experience. That socioeconomic circumstances are important, that ethnicity is important, that rural-urban is important, that background is important, and I dare say that living in Tobago may be important. Okay, quickly, I'm thinking of the bell. Let's look at CSEC data. Now this CSEC data, unfortunately, is not for Trinidad and Tobago. I couldn't find as much as I wanted there. So it's a Caribbean-wide presentation here, but the trend, as you will see, continues. The blue part, of course, represents male entrance to CSEC subjects. This is just a total view. Male entrance and female entrance. So just think about that again. You have people entering Form 1. Now they may not be altogether equal in boys and girls because of the C exam weeds out some. In Trinidad and Tobago we have universal secondary education, so everybody really should go up. It may be a different case in other countries. So if everybody goes up to Form 1, you know, how come at the end of Form 5, this is the registration of students, what it's like. This is the entire Caribbean to show you that the blue are the people from different countries, the boys, and the green are girls. I cannot account for Suriname, which is 100% blue. They could have a mistake there. But Sabre, which is 100% green, I could account for a small country, which is a Dutch nation, could have a few candidates going up for the exam, but I cannot account for Suriname. But throughout all the Caribbean countries, similar trends occur. More girls are being entered for CSEC at 5th form level. And I have chosen, and this is where I thought you would be much closer to the data, but I've chosen selected subjects, some of which are thought as male dominant or stereotypical male subjects to see how they perform. So let me just go, this is for 2010 and 2011. In both cases, look at 2011, there are fewer males entering the exam than females. However, the percentage in each group who will achieve grade 1, we have a slight male advantage. So more females enter, but more males get grade 1. Okay? And that was also the case in the year before, 2010. If we look at physics, which is a stereotypical male kind of subject, we see more males entering the exam, the blue. However, when we come to performance, we are now seeing that females are getting more grade 1s than males. And we take it to bio, again more females enter and more females get grade 1. And chem, more females enter, but the males still have a little margin there of slightly more. Notice it's slightly, even though the males are performing, the females are quite close. So these are the traditional male-dominated subjects where females are getting more grade 1s or they are quite close. And let's look at two subjects that are supposed to be more female-dominated. What is the gap there? Well, in English A, you have a humongous amount of females entering compared to males. Imagine that, a subject like English, that you have such, well, low, comparatively speaking, those who are being entered for the exam. And look at the gap between, in the grade 1s, the males get 4.85% of males get grade 1, whereas 8.3% of females. So the gap is quite large. Okay, so you have continued female dominance in the traditional female subjects, which are literacy based, and the similar case with social studies. All right, to summarize quickly, we are saying more girls than boys are entered for all exams, except physics, which more boys enter. And this does not reflect their relative numbers on entry to secondary school. So something happens along the way. I think certain schools have put things in place by time 4th and 5th form. So if you don't get a certain grade in the mock exams and so on, you may not be sent forward. I suspect that it's even more so in other Caribbean countries, which may be strapped for cash to enroll everybody in the exam. So there is that. So they may be in school, but they're not reflected here because they were not registered. And secondly, the processes that work on boys throughout schooling to encourage them to drop out, perhaps. We are seeing more females achieving grade 1, including physics. We are seeing more males, however, continuing to excel at mathematics. So when we're talking about male underachieving and so on, it is useful to remember that males are also doing well. However, we are saying the achievement gap is small between the genders. And that may be a good thing. Don't we want them to perform equally or close to equally? But we're saying that in English language, social studies, and I'm sure perhaps history and related subjects, that the achievement gap is large and in favor of girls. I am saying, and I think you will all agree, that English language is important and necessary. 1, for being successful in school. 2, for being functional in society and in relationships. And social studies, I would think, would be the premier subject on the curriculum, but I think it's sidelined all through many schools. Social studies is important for understanding self and society, for having empathy, and for building a more democratic society. And according to the Archbishop's message, it is where you consider things about being human, what it is to be human. And to have boys performing hardly, not in a very creditable manner in these two key areas of the curriculum, I think is something we need to take forward as a cause for concern. And I think we need to think about how to ensure a gender-fair school. That is 5 minutes, right? And so quickly on to CAPE results. Again, this is total Caribbean here. At this point in time, though males are supposed to be serious, they have come through CSEC, and we have a select population now going into CAPE, academically sound and so on, but we still have a preponderance of females. This is some Trinidad and Tobago data that I got out of NEHURST, communication studies, just looking at how many pass. The yellow would be male. So for communication studies, 94.9% pass, which is great. Girls, however, is 98.1. And all through is the same thing, but it is not so much a problem because they are passing and passing at high. Okay, so at this level, although there continues to be girl dominance, it is okay, the boys are okay. And finally, my implications, which I have to go closer to see, I'm saying that language competencies, we need to do a greater focus on that, particularly perhaps in boys' schools or where boys are with some innovative strategies where language is concerned. The SEA, it is said, tests mainly grammar and comprehension, but their syllabus all along included speaking and listening, but these things are not taught. Not examined, so maybe it's not so fair to males. Could be the SEA exam could be less paper-based and more action-oriented. I want to just call your attention to rhetoric. We talk about low achievement, but it's not the same as underachievement. Boys, to a large extent, underachieve. When we're talking low or high achievement, we're talking low or high ability. But what I want to say is that underachievers are those whose ability is not reflected in their performance. And I think that is so encouraging for us to think that they could perform really well, they're not just doing so, okay? Rhetoric again. Not all boys underachieve and not all girls achieve. The concerns often pit girls against boys. If you look closely at your program, you would see that I am at a disadvantage in the lineup of male personnel. So I don't know if this point will come across, but girls are in trouble too. If a girl is underperforming, drops out of school, that's a lot of problems for the society because motherhood comes up very quickly. So underperforming girls should be also part of this discourse. And I would just like to close by saying that I think good education is good education. And if we find lovely and wonderful strategies to engage boys, I am sure they will also engage girls. So continuing to divide them like this may be misguided. And we need to think about that at the beginning of the conversation so that it could come back up as an issue later on. And again, I make a point about we need teacher training in gender relations because we'll only introduce people to gender issues and so on. It isn't a focused small course discussion and immersion into gender issues. Thank you.